This conference will now be recorded.
Well, all of you know we record, so we don't have to go through that disclaimer. Today's the 13th of October. This is the high-risk recurrent advanced prostate cancer call, and welcome to everybody. I will do a quick roll call. So we've got Len, and listen up. If I don't call your name, you can call me anything you want except late for dinner. All right. Len, Carl, Dennis C, John I, Dr. Mark, Rusty, Lou, Brian Heisey, Les, Herb, Dennis M, Jake, Peter K, Jeff, Jim, Jerry, John A, and Peter M. Did I miss anybody? Okay, now it's too late. You can't call me anything you want now. Okay, so let me start at the top. We'll run down and we will see who would like some time today, and go from there. If somebody comes in new, you may have to figure out how to add them in. Okay, so I'll start with Len. Len.
Nothing tonight, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Carl.
Yes.
Yes. Because you had something from last week we couldn't get to, and I promised that I'd elevate you. So, yes, I do remember that. Dennis C. Anything for you, senor?
Nothing for me, Rick. Thank you.
Okay. John I. Anything for you?
Nope, just here to hear the guru's gab.
Okay. Dr. Mark. Anything for you today?
Nope, I'm just going to be here and learn.
Thank you, thank you. Rusty, anything for you today?
Yeah, just very quickly, I have a report and just state something I read that I'd like to share.
Okay, Lou, anything you'd like to talk about today?
Oh, I'm good. I have to leave at 7 for an ED conference. Maybe it's the same one you're going to.
No, I'm going to. We're starting a new group, so I'm going over to help the moderators in that new group. Brian.
Okay.
Brian, we haven't spoken to you for ages. Welcome back. Anything you'd like to talk about today?
Yeah, I have an update. I'm not sure. I'm having problems with my webcam, so I'm here on speaker, but I'll try to figure out what's going on.
I can imagine. If you can get your face on, it'd be great. If not, don't worry about it. And your partner in crime, Les, anything for you today?
Not today, thanks.
Okay. Herb, anything for you?
Yeah, I would like to bring up something for this. I need help.
Okay, we're here to help. Dennis M, what's going on in your world? Plenty, eh?
Hey, Rick. Yeah, nothing really to update. I'm still churning through clinical trials, trying to figure out what to do, but no decision yet.
Okay, anything you want to discuss with us?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think the input I've had so far has been terrific, but I will keep everybody posted. So thanks again.
And Jake, I know you've got at least one thing to tell us.
Okay.
Yep. Peter Kafka. Peter K. No?
I'm good today.
Okay. See, look at that hair coming back. Everybody see that? See that hair coming back?
Quicker than ever.
Jeff, how are you? Anything for you?
Hi. Yes, I do have a question for the group if
Okay. Jim W., anything for you?
Yes, Rick.
Okay. Jerry P., anything for you from San Carlos? Where's he gone? He was here a minute ago. Oh, there he is. Jerry, I can't hear you. Are you there? And you've gone black. I'll come back to you. You may be having an internet moment there. I now see you're not there at all. Are you there? Your microphone came on. All right. Yeah, now I see you. Are you there, Jerry?
Yeah, I was having trouble getting the phone, so I had to run around the house here. But I have nothing for today. Thank you.
All righty. John A., anything for you?
Yes, sir. Got a couple questions.
Okay. Peter M., anything for you?
No, Rick, I'm just listening tonight.
Terrific. And Ken, anything you'd like to talk about tonight?
No, just on the call. I'll just listen in. Running a little late today, but I'm good.
Okay. All right. So we got a few people. We got a few takers today, but we should be able to get through everybody. Since I have been known not always to keep my promises, I'm going to try and be better today, and I'm going to go to Carl Borman, who just finished eating in time. Oh, we can come back. We can come back to you if you're still eating.
No.
Oh, no. Okay. All right. So let's start with Carl Foreman. Tell me what's on your mind.
Okay, so last week it was fresh in my memory about my experience at the time. Now it's a week later, so I have to go back into my brain as to what I wanted to talk about. But it's specifically relating to clinical trials. I applied for two very different clinical trials and got two very different results. The first clinical trial is through Weill Cornell in New York, a well-known radiation oncologist by the name of Scott Tagawa. And it's relating to, he has several trials that were noted on the clinicaltrials.gov as recruiting for patients with, he's got like 3 different PSMA trials. And so the requirement was that I needed to meet with him in person. But before I even met with him in person, I had to show them that within 3 days of the appointment, I did not have COVID. And they allowed my wife along, which is very difficult to have her included in any meetings, but because it was the initial visit, they allowed her to come. So we had a somewhat lengthy discussion about PSMA scans and what their trials were about. And about halfway into it, he said, well, you know, you may very well be a good candidate, but we have no openings. It's like, well, why am I here? I should have said to him, why am I here? You know, and it was a drive from central New Jersey into Manhattan, going through traffic. Yeah, it was a little bit over an hour to get in there, but when we were finished with the meeting, it was right around rush hour, around 5:30 p.m. And it took me the same hour and 15 minutes to get in. It took me 2.5 hours to get home. So I wasn't a very happy camper with that. So that's the PSMA experience with the trial. And the other situation is a trial, and it's called HERO, and it escapes me what HERO stands for, but it's a trial that's sponsored by NIH, and they are looking to see how exercise and meditation benefits the patient. I said, wow, okay, so I don't have to do any specific medications or anything that could be invasive. And so, you know, hey, sign me up. So there were 3 different groups for this trial. They were looking to bring in 100 people. And so the first day when I went in, oh, even before I went in, I had to prepare a log, several logs, a sleep log of how well or not I was sleeping, and also a food diary for the past week. I also had to provide a stool sample, and then the day that I had the appointment was they took blood. It's like, wow, all of this stuff. So all I am in this trial is a number. I'm number 162. So I will not receive any specific results from me. It'll be all part of the group going forward. And so the 3 different groups were or are group number 1 is one that will be doing exercises twice a week, going to the Rutgers Cancer Institute, and they have some type of light exercise. They have a personal trainer for 2 weeks, for twice a week, and this is for 12 weeks. So this will run through the end of December. And that's one group with exercise only. The second group is exercise the same twice a week, but also a meditation class. Okay, and I had hoped, wow, you know, that would be nice for me to have the meditation and the exercise, although I am back into my exercise routine. And then the third group is the control group, which is continuing to do what you're doing. And so after they took blood from me, then they put my name into the computer. Oh, any feedback. And so I was randomized into one of those 3 groups. So guess what? I was randomized into the control group. It's like, oh my goodness.
Not your day.
Like, okay. So, and they asked me, well, you know, do you still want to continue? And I said, wow, look, you're going to pay me $350 for this participation. And I said, oh, sure, hey, I'll participate. They gave me a pedometer, which I have to keep tabs of the steps that I take every day. And there's a weekly diary of the types of activities that I performed, whether it's vacuuming or playing golf or going fishing or doing exercise. And it's all these different things that I have to fill out. And then they will call me every week and I need to report to them as far as what activities I've been doing. So those are my 2 different experiences with clinical trials. Now, there was a third clinical trial, which very early on in my experience, I also participated in, and that's called the name of the trial is SimCap. And the SimCap trial was to determine whether someone like myself who was diagnosed with metastatic prostate cancer, whether a robotic prostatectomy would help survival, extend survival, versus standard of care. So there's the standard of care by itself, and there's standard of care with surgery. So I got randomized into the standard of care with surgery. So at least, okay, wow, that's a somewhat better outcome, so to speak. And so several months after starting the trial, I had my surgery. I started the trial in July 2018. I had my surgery November 2018, and I still have ongoing quarterly meetings with the surgeon to discuss my situation. And interesting enough, there are 2 things that occurred as part of this whole process. Is that I was recently diagnosed with a abdominal hernia as a result of having some recent scans. So I actually met with a surgeon, and we talked about how did this happen? And he basically said, well, it's right by your belly button where they stuck the camera of the Da Vinci machine, and eventually it caused a hernia. Because it left an opening, and the opening got bigger, and now I have a hernia. Now, do I need to address the hernia? Not at this point, because he said it depends on what kind of symptoms you have. I can't say I have any substantive symptoms with the hernia, so not anxious to get into surgery, although surgery with the hernia is not a major issue. So that was with that. And then with that, as I was talking last week about the lymphedema, well, the lymphedema was as a result of 27 lymph nodes having been removed during the robotic surgery when my prostate was removed. And that has implications, which I'm dealing with now. I actually signed up with a therapy, a certified therapy group that deals specifically with lymphedema. It's a nationwide certification that they have, and it's they were measuring me for a wrap. It's on my left leg, so et cetera, et cetera. So I don't want to get into more details. So I just wanted to say my experiences with clinical trials.
Okay. Well, just a quick couple of things and then I'll throw it out. The first is that it's not bad to have made contact with Tagawa, even though I really don't understand why the hell they can't qualify you on the telephone. That is beyond me. And it is frustrating and disappointing. And frankly,
he has no more slots to put me in. There are no more slots.
So yeah, but so why do they bother getting you in? And I would say, look, you know, always happy to try, but why did you let me in? So just as an aside, Len and Peter are going to be interviewing Scott Tagawa in early November. I think it's November 10th or the 11th. We'll tell you more about that shortly, but they're scheduled to do an interview with Tagawa. And who was the other one? Do either of you guys remember who was paired with Tagawa? It was a big name. It doesn't matter. Well, but you'll find out in due course who it is. We'll be publicizing that within the next couple of weeks, if not sooner.
So I assume the topic will be PSMA scanning.
We don't actually know because we're partnering with another organization who's organized all of this. They came to us and asked us for hosts and interviewers. And so Peter and Len and myself are doing it. And there are 3 and we're each doing 2. So that's the one I'm not involved in. So we're each pairing up with a different one and they're going to prepare. They say they've got the questions prepared, so they'll send them to us. And if we have comments on the questions, we'll get back to them. But they say they have questions prepared, and they also say that the questions are not coming from the docs. So I don't know who's preparing the questions. We may have some editorial comment on the questions, but we're not that far along yet. But right now they're making a flyer, and they're putting us onto their page. And once that's all done, we'll get back to you. But there's some good docs. Here is one. Tagawa, Elena Refiastu from MD Anderson, and I forget.
Vanderweel or something.
Vanderweel, who's at Vanderweel, who is at Northwestern, who Dennis is considering doing a trial with. And then who's the one that's with Thomas Beer? Chowdhury, that's right. So Atish Chowdhury, who was one of Professor Bill, God rest his soul's doctors. In fact, he was running the trial where Professor Bill had discovered the key pathway in his lab. He's at Dana-Farber. So these should be pretty good. They're only half-hour sessions. We'll tell you more in time. So I think that was, oh, and I know what the other thing was I was going to ask Carl. Carl, I'm sure you shared with them with the initial trial that you were positive for BRCA. I mean, that's got to mess up. I don't see how they've got to factor that in.
Well, you know, it was early on in my treatment and diagnosis, so we didn't know until months later that I was BRCA2 positive. And it was actually after I had the surgery.
Right. No, I know that, but you shared it with them, right? So they know that's part of your record.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Who's got questions for Carl on his trials? Anybody?
Carl.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Not about the trial per se, but on the lymphedema. When you had your lymph nodes removed, where were they located?
In the groin area. When they removed the prostate and the seminal vesicle and 27 lymph nodes, and 2 of which were positive for cancer, unfortunately. And I found out, I said, wow, 27 lymph nodes. It turns out that's probably all of the lymph nodes that are in my groin area.
Oh.
And then I subsequently had, you know, this that was just recently diagnosed. I kept complaining. I said, you know, I've got this edema in my left leg, and nobody was coming up with any kind of an answer until recently. I went to a vascular doctor, and when I told him about the surgery and they removed the lymph nodes, he said, well, it's obvious that you have lymphedema. So even my primary care doctor didn't know. I'm going to see him tomorrow. He put me on a water pill with potassium a month ago to assume that maybe it was going to help relieve the edema, which it really didn't. So that'll be stopped.
Any follow-up, Dennis, from you on the lymphedema?
No, thank you.
Carl, this is Peter. So
hold on, Peter. Hold on. We got Len, and then Dr. Mark, and then you. Len, go ahead.
Yeah. So I guess first of all, it's fairly common to have lymphedema when they surgically remove such a large number of lymph nodes. But what I really wanted to ask is, I'm navigating someone who lives in the city who went to Tagawa for, sounds like the same trial, a PSMA trial, and he had the exact same experience as you. He goes there, and then they say, you have to wait like, I don't know, an hour and a half, and then they say, well, we don't have any slots open for you. So did he at least tell you when a slot may open for you for this, or you're not going to get one?
No, I mean, he's anticipating that the FDA is going to approve PSMA scans within the next few months, so it's going to be a moot point.
That's crazy. Yeah, so he's actually a medical oncologist. I thought you said he was a radiation oncologist.
I thought he was, yeah. But who's the other guy? Dan Margolis, who works with him at Weill Cornell. I guess Margolis is the radiation guy, and he's the medical oncologist.
Right. Dr. Mark.
So when I was setting up for my PSMA scan, part of the issue was that the device that makes the tracer has limited supply, and you have a short time to use the tracer after they make it. Do you know that this was just them running you around, or was it a function of, hey, we've got all the slots for PSMA filled and there's not another slot for you?
I mean, there was a brief discussion about the availability of that. And actually, when I spoke with Yolanda McKinney at NIH in Bethesda, Maryland, where I also applied for their PSMA trial, she said, I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you, but it's going to be highly unlikely that you're going to be able to get into this and have the trial down by us. So yeah, there definitely is some kind of a shortage of that. And I participated in a recent Zoom call with mostly doctors. It really wasn't for patients, but there's a doctor down in Australia who's very well known in the PSMA circle, Mark something, it escapes me, but I actually sent him an email after the Zoom was over to ask him that once the PSMA is now approved by the FDA, is there going to be sufficient PSMA or whatever the was it F18 or gallium 68? Or I think Len, you know which one it is. If that's going to be available, but I haven't gotten a response from him.
Columbia has the DCF-PYL, and the advantage of the F18 is that lasts longer, so they have a little bit more flexibility in scheduling those. Columbia has a study going on with that for PET scan, but you have to have a PSA over 2 for that. So I don't know where you stand.
Right, it's not over 2 yet. I'm going to have my next blood work tomorrow. But there's Dr. Mark Stein, who I've mentioned previously, who's my one of the people that I get advice from, and he's at Columbia Presbyterian. So Tagawa did mention, he said, you know, I think there's something going on at Columbia, but he said,
Carl, I'm going to interrupt you because I want to get to Peter, and we got to move. We want to move on here. Peter, this is a great opportunity. I know you have a question. It's also a great opportunity for you to update us on how you're doing with that PSMA list that you said you were going to put together.
I'm pretty close to finishing it. I just got to devote some time. Yep, I've got a spreadsheet going, so it's pretty close.
Fantastic.
So in terms of PSMA trials, I did 2 trials. The last one was in December at Stanford, and I was number 150 out of a 160 cutoff. So they do have cutoffs on trials. I got in on the skin of my teeth, only because I was flexible about when I could get there, and I knew I had to get there as fast as possible because they did cut it off. So it wasn't a factor of how much they made; it was just how the trial worked. The other thing is, when I did my surgery 4.5 years ago, they took out an equal number of lymph nodes from me. I did not get lymphedema then, but I did get it recently as a result of my chemo. And I've been, as I've mentioned, I think over the last couple of weeks, I've been doing acupuncture, and it's made a huge difference. My edema in my legs has pretty much disappeared, very little of it. It was the kind of edema where you push in on your foot or your leg, and it makes an indentation. So it was obviously a lot of water retention, but I think it's called pitted or whatever. But anyway, it's pretty much gone now, and even the neuropathy is just about gone. I'm going to keep going with it with the acupuncture. It's not quite gone yet. I still have it a little bit in my toes, but just saying, it can be something. It could be a result of the drugs, the olaparib or whatever, as opposed to the surgery.
Okay, Peter, thanks. And by the way, I talked with Jerry Deans today at some length, and he's going to give you a call, Peter, because they're talking about putting him on a double dose of chemo. So he's going to give you a call again, and you can talk to him again. His disease is coming back, and I'm concerned about him. Let's just say that. Let's move on, but I got 3 people to check with if they'd like time today who have arrived. Rich Jackson, would you like any time today, Mr. J? Any noise on the western front, on the eastern front?
No, we're still quiet here. Thank you.
You're still quiet on the eastern front. Okay. Larry Fish.
Wow. Nice job, Rick. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
No,
Okay.
I'm good tonight. Thank you.
Okay. And Tracy, anything for you tonight?
Just two quick questions.
Okay. Right now, let's go to, I'm going to ask you all to be relatively brief, so we can get through everybody. We've got how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people, and we've got 80 minutes. So that should be fine. 10 minutes a person. That's not so bad. Rusty, what's on your mind and what's the article you read?
Okay, what's first thing is I haven't given a report on my ultrasensitive PSA that came back Thursday last week. After finishing up the radiation and ADT, it's less than 0.01, and then the test that I did, that's the lowest it can go. So that's good news there. So about where they would expect it to be after 39 rounds of radiation and ADT. So, not too excited about it. We'll see where we're at 6 months and a year from now. But there was someone mentioned it in the support group on Facebook, but just interesting that the study between breast cancer and relation to prostate cancer, I'm sure you guys have talked about it before, but it was kind of news to me. And they both share the BRCA 1 and 2 gene, and I thought that was interesting.
So what exactly, I mean, was this a trial that you were going on, or a trial that that's with a comparison, or I'm not clear.
It was the link between, so if your mother had breast cancer, they're saying that the children of that mother are both more susceptible to breast cancer and prostate cancer because of the BRCA 1 and 2 gene that attribute causes. Right.
So it's not, and we can add a couple more to that. Pancreatic, unfortunately, and certain melanomas, and even colorectal, because the BRCA positive people need to get annual colonoscopies. So there's got to be something in that too. And really what we're talking about there is something we talk about quite often on this call, which is in this group, which is the germline mutations, to see what you may have inherited. And I hope that we may even start a germline mutation group. We have a number of people on here who are germline BRCA, like Carl, and his daughter has the BRCA. And we have Peter, who doesn't have BRCA, but has a Lynch syndrome mutation, MSH6, right, Peter, MSH6? Peter Kafka, MSH6.
Yes, MSH6.
MSH6, which is one of the Lynch syndrome mutations and makes him susceptible to a number of cancers, including prostate cancer, but the biggest one in that group is colorectal. Yes, we are well aware of it, and we try to get people to test appropriately if they have a family history. More than that, the NCCN guidelines now require the doctors to test you for germline if there's a family history. In fact, they ask that they suggest you be tested now if you have any sort of high risk with a germline. Anybody want to comment on or add to what I just said?
I think, didn't Peter also have a somatic BRCA too?
Yes.
Yeah, it would be an interesting discussion sometime about comorbidities and the proclivity toward it. Like, I just got a letter from my colonoscopy surgeon saying it's time for one. And I'm saying, well, I don't know if I want to go through that. I just finished chemotherapy and all that stuff. So I'm not sure how many battles I want to fight on different fronts at the same time. whether it's worth it. So that's a discussion I'm going to have with my oncologist, whether this is realistic or not. I'd be curious, Carl, do you get into things like that of trying? I mean, I get skin cancer tests just because I live in Hawaii and I'm outside a lot, but other than that, I mean, I do colonoscopies once in a while, but right now I'm not keen on it.
I just had one just a month and a half ago, and it was not pleasant, but everything was fine. And they say come back in 5 years. So
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, the prep is the hard part.
right.
Anybody
Yes.
in the group use Cologuard? Try Cologuard.
My wife,
You know the thing they mail you. You put a sample in a little box and send it back to them.
My
I
wife
thought it
used that once, but came
I
back
thought it
negative for her.
was a square sponge character.
my wife's came back as a false positive, so I don't have a lot of
Oh yeah,
faith in that.
my girlfriend swears by it, so to speak.
Well, I mean, I do agree. I do agree very much with Herb that for some of us, the worst part is the prep. The procedure isn't certainly for prostate guys, the procedure isn't that bad because they've been poking around there for long enough that it doesn't make a lot of difference, and you just lie down and boom, it's all done. But yeah, I don't know Cologuard. And Carl, I would. I hate to say this to you, but I think I would be going back to whoever did your GI tests and say, did you note that I'm BRCA2 germline? I think it should be raised. I agree with Peter that we don't know exactly whether you need it or you don't, but they do say that if you're BRCA2, you should get more frequent colonoscopies.
Well, I understand that one of the potential secondary cancers is pancreatic, not necessarily colon cancer, and the melanoma and leukemia possibly is like, oh, but colon didn't come up on the radar.
Well, I know that, and I don't hear colon a lot, but they do say that for colon cancer, if you're BRCA2, you should get frequent colonoscopies. So I'll let you. I'm just passing the information. I'm not giving you advice. I'm just telling you what I've heard from other people.
I appreciate it. I will ask the question of the oncologist. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I don't know how many more support groups I can manage. If I got another cancer, that would do me in. With too many, I wouldn't have enough nights.
Okay. All right. So let's keep on rolling here. Jim Barnes has just arrived. Jim, did you need any time tonight? We may even beaten him to switching his mic on. Jim, can you hear us?
And there's the mute button. Yes, I hear you.
Would you like?
I hear you. Yes.
Oh, okay, so I've got you as a yes. Okay. See, this is Sisyphean. This is what happens. You get through one person, but another one arrives. So you really don't have 10 minutes per person anymore. Let's go on to Brian. Okay. What's on your mind, Brian? We haven't seen you for a while.
Yeah, so I don't know what's going on with my webcam, but I think there's a picture of me, but it's frozen. So
yeah. Great.
Yeah, so I've been kind of enjoying life on the motorcycle over the summer, but so I've been out all over the place, and which is great. But I did, I think it's been 3-4 months maybe that I've been on. I did have a rising PSA. I've been on, just for some background, I was metastatic 3 years ago and almost 3.5 years ago, and had chemo and had numerous bouts of radiation to the pelvic area and to spots, you know, the whack-a-mole. And I had cryoablation earlier this year that seemed to go fine. And but the PSA kept rising a bit. I am on Zytiga. I've been on it for about a little over a year. And it got up to about a little over 3. And I went back and had the scan. I went back to Mayo, had the scan, met with Dr. Kwan, and there was another spot that showed up on my spine. So we radiated that because that seemed to be seems to be working for me fairly well over the years. So that was back in July, knocked the PSA down to I think 1.6, and it's holding there now for 2 months. So I feel great. I'm going back to Mayo in November for another scan just to see what's going on. And we talked about that there might be a change in my second line anti-androgen possibly if I didn't get a response with the spot radiation. But since I did, we're holding off on any changes. We're sticking with the Zytiga for now, trying to get as much as we can out of it. And yeah, so you know, I feel good, like I said, and the spot radiation has been working for me for the most part, and keeping the PSA at bay. And I'll have another scan. So that's all I kind of wanted to update.
Well, that's a positive update, and delighted that you're under control, and I'm even more delighted that you're managing the Abbey so well, because we do know a lot of the guys get significant fatigue from abiraterone. Who would like to ask Brian any questions or any comments?
Yeah, I would. So Brian, the spot radiation, that the most recent one, was that, what did they use, SBRT? And where was the bone met?
Yes, they used SBRT. It was a new spot that showed up. I believe it was, I want to say it was a little bit lower in the back, because I had problems in the mid back routinely, and that's the area I had cryoablated. That now appears, you know, on the last scan appears to be, you know, gone, or at least non-existent now with that. But yeah, so this new spot was a little bit lower, I believe. I'm trying to remember what T number it was, but yeah, it was SBRT, and it was just, I had to go back for, it was just 1 day of treatment.
Good. And I know, Rick, I think you were quoting an article recently that said this best sequence with the second line anti-androgens was first Zytiga followed by enzalutamide, right?
Yeah.
So
correct.
you might want to mention that to your doc.
Yeah.
If he's going to switch you.
I believe that's what they had mentioned when we talked back in July. But again, that's kind of on the back burner right now, you know, since the PSA did drop 50%. So they think it, you know, they think the abiraterone is still working a bit. So it's good. We've been having lots of fun, enjoying life.
And I also think that when it was done, I'm not sure, we'd have to go back and look, but the other utamides might not have been even available then, namely, you know, the apalutamide or the darolutamide. So it could be that Abby before an androgen blocker is I mean, I loosely interpreted. Maybe we could say Abby before an androgen blocker. Although I know the actual trial showed Abby before enzalutamide because that's what they had at hand. So anyone else have any?
Yeah, just a quick question. Great news. Hey, with regard to your scans, were they standard scans or were they PET scans?
So at Mayo, they do the PET CT with the C11 choline, and especially at that level of PSA, things are more detectable with that scan. Plus, that's been my history. So, excuse me, they have a lot to go back on. And again, when they did the scan in July, they saw that the cryoablated area and the area that I had problems with before was all clear. So this new area popped up, and that was it. Actually, it was that one area, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Brian, I missed it? Are you on Lupron also?
Yes, I'm on Lupron as well, that I get here locally. I had talks over the years about potentially going off it, but haven't yet. So I'll keep on that and then decide what I'm gonna do. I feel still pretty good. I mean, I'm able to ride the motorcycle all over the place, and people are surprised at the kind of energy I have sometimes. But part of it is just I feel good. So
two things. One is that there are studies that say abiraterone monotherapy works just as well. But I think you've got to have pretty big balls to decide to do that. But they're there. Dennis, Korea, I know you're on some sort of a holiday. Is it from both Abbey and the LHRH, or just one of them?
It's everything, Lupron and the Abbey and the prednisone.
Okay. So the holidays may be on the table. And the other thing is, I know Rusty. Where's Rusty? Rusty, you still with us, man? Wave at me if you're still with us. He's got his camera off and his microphone off. He was interested. I'm sure he wanted to know what sort of bike you ride, but he isn't here, so we won't get into that, Brian. Okay. Oh, Rich Jackson may want to know that though. Tell us what sort of bike you ride, so our bikers can compare notes.
So I've ridden since I was a kid. I had a mini bike when I was 12 years old, and then I graduated up to a 125 on off-road that I had for a number of years. Actually, it was back in the old AMF Harley Davidson days, and then I gave that up when I got married, had kids, and got back into about 8 years ago. I bought an HD Dyna first, and now I have a touring bike, a Street Glide, and went to the Smokies back in August for 10 days. Just did the Lake Michigan Circle Tour, which is a great tour for anybody in the Midwest. I just did that like 2 weeks ago, and that was awesome. Yeah, so recently divorced and dealing with those things that, the hormone therapies kind of mess with. And actually, I think I've been pretty fortunate for the most part with the hormone therapies, but I did finally resorted to doing the injections, and that's worked. So for anybody that wants to talk about that more, I'm glad to talk about it. It's worked, and I'm happy about that.
Well, that's great. Okay, well, unless we have any questions from Rusty or Rich Jackson about motorbikes, I think there are other bikers on there as well, but I forget who they are. We will move on. Okay, so let's go to Tracy. What are your questions, Tracy?
I think so I'm relatively new. Probably started this about 2.5 months ago, really just figuring out what my diagnosis was, and moved right into stage 4. Lately, and I use Firmagon and Xtandi, kind of like a brain fog. And I'm wondering if anyone else has had sort of that sort of experience. I mean, the other day, I find myself like, it's the big four, right? Where's my mask? Where's my keys? Where's my wallet? Where's my cell phone? And driving down the road thinking I forgot my phone, I head back home, and meanwhile the phone is right in the truck with me the whole time. And I just feel like I'm in a brain fog all the time, and it's gotten a little nerve-wracking with my driving, because I find that I'm on auto mode here, and I'm a little worried that I could not look at a light or something. But is that something that people experience on the ADT therapies?
Right, not all at once. Not all at once. Who would like to go first here? And I'm limiting this discussion to 10 minutes max, okay? Who would like to go first? Oh, Carl,
Tracy,
you've talked a lot.
that is definitely normal.
Already. We'll come back to you. Who hasn't said anything yet today? Who's got their hand up? Ah, John. Hey, John A., you start.
I'm actually on the list twice because I was having trouble, so I signed in on my cell phone. Yeah, I'm 12 weeks. My microphone sounding funny? You getting an echo?
We can hear you fine.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm 12 weeks. I'm 12 weeks on Permagon and Adderall, and it took a couple months before the fog really hit me. So my brain is working slow. I've lost a couple of dozen IQ points, and yes, it's typically to be expected.
Okay.
I don't know the best way to fight it because it's regular, it's fairly new for me. I think a lot of us probably just wait until we can stop the drug, but exercise sharpens me up.
Thanks. Yeah. So this
sharpens me up a little.
Yeah. This we loved it. So exercise sharpens you up, and what else did you say?
Coffee.
Coffee. Okay, no, that's fine. We'd love to hear what sharpens you up, and I'll give you my tips right at the end. Who else has not spoken today that'd like to talk about brain fog? Anybody? Okay, so who has spoken today who would like to talk about brain fog?
Yeah, I'll say.
I haven't spoken yet today, so I'll take just a second.
Go ahead, Ken, and then Carl.
So Tracy, it is just part of the game. I mean, I remember one time running to the airport and I thought I forgot my bag, and I drove all the way back to my house to get it. It was the back of the car. I didn't even look in the back of the car. So it's just part of the. I must admit, when I stopped enzalutamide, it got better for me. I switched from enzalutamide to Abby, and enzalutamide messed with my head a lot. I was just always in a brain fog. And yeah, don't drive too much. If you think you have brain fog, let someone else drive. So.
Yeah, I mean, it can be pretty bad. And at one point, I had my dog in my truck with me, and then I stopped for gas, and he had gone in the back and laid down, and he wasn't responding to my call. And I'm like, I literally talked myself into, did he get out of the truck while I was pumping gas? So, and the dog is literally in the back of the truck, in the back seat area. But yeah, so it can get kind of crazy. I have had some hot flashes. They've sort of started. That should save me quite a bit of money on fuel costs this winter. So, always looking for the silver lining.
We've got a few tips on hot flashes too, but let's stick on brain fog right now. Anyone else? Who else would like to talk about brain fog? Carl, go on. But short.
Very, very short. Also known as cognitive impairment. That's my comment.
Yeah, I am going to use that on a couple forms that I need to fill out. So.
Tracy, this is Peter. I did a year on Zytiga, and I was wrestling with this quite a bit. I switched to darolutamide, Rebecca by Bayer, and it's remarkably better. I mean, yes, once in a while you forget something, but I see a night and day difference in terms of brain fog for me. And another thing that is helpful is get a routine going. You know, always put your keys in your wallet in the same place and so forth and so on. But darolutamide makes a big difference for me.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead and then go ahead. You please go ahead.
The only other thing is, you know, really, you mentioned routine. And because it's only been about like 3 months, I'm kind of moving into that phase of, wow, this is really real. It's not something you see something happening and you can write things on books, down on books and stuff. And so it is a little bit much all at that time when it starts hitting you with brain fog and stuff that suddenly it's been a little bit of emotion, a roller coaster emotional wise. And yeah, so I don't know if anyone else has that same experience where you find out, boom, stage 4, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know, you get hot flashes, you get brain fog, and then it becomes very, very real. So
yeah, I think that is a big issue. Anyone else want to say anything on brain fog? Any thoughts, tips, ideas? Because I know I'd be surprised if there's anybody on this call who has not experienced brain fog. So I'll just give you a couple of little tips that I have, and I found very useful. You have to keep challenging your brain, and you can do that by choosing some sort of puzzle that you like. I know Jerry Pelfrey has done this. I had a friend who got himself into Sudoku, and he used to do 2 or 3 Sudoku puzzles every day. I played bridge every night on the internet. I played a rubber bridge every night just so that it would force me to remember the cards that had been played. I didn't do very well because a lot of times I couldn't, but that was for me. But try and schedule in to your day or night some type of mental exercise. It is so important.
okay.
That's the best tip. So to summarize, we've got exercise that definitely helps. We've got a routine that definitely helps. We've got challenging your mind, your brain every day that definitely helps. Anything else? Anybody? Anything else? Anybody got?
Well, if you have the luxury, a nap always helps. Unless you're working and you can't, do that, a nap always helps me anyway.
Yeah, and nap's a good idea. Yeah, a nap's a good idea.
Yeah, one of the things I invested in was an Oculus, which is one of the VR games a lot of kids have, and there's a lot of different things on it you can do that challenge your brain and it keeps you moving. So I wanted something that was going to help keep me active as well. So started ramping that up.
Can I add something? I agree with everything that you said, Rick, and everybody else said, but what helps me is, when I have the fog or I'm going up or I'm going down as a result of the Eligard that I'm on, it's kind of like realizing that
I'm just in the middle of moderating.
I'm in this fog, or I have these,
can you call me back?
And it's the Eligard that's affecting me. And I kind of try to jump outside my own consciousness and say, wait a minute, I got to stop this. I got to control it. And that's what helps me. Recognizing it and trying to stop it, going to do some exercise or whatever.
That's really good advice, and I have found myself doing that. And so yeah, you kind of become like third party watching yourself. And
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, I really feel it's inhibited my creativity. Like when I'm writing, I have to write a lot, send a lot of emails. I have people working for me and I have to instruct people on what to do and what have you, and see how things are going, and communicate to customers, and that's all. Yeah, that creativity is more difficult for me in the fog.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I think we've done justice to brain fog. Apologies for that call that just came through. I still can't figure out how to use this damn smartphone and I forget to mute it before I start. Did we cover both topics for you, or was the other one hot flashes that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, it goes right back to what James was saying about stopping to catch myself of, okay, this is the hot flash, this is what people talk about, and in realizing it's the impact of the medication, because like I would sit there and I'd have a hot flash, and then I would start to get anxious. So then that would add this like anxiety circle, and then I would actually start sweating. And so now I have a way of like kind of stopping that process and being like, oh, hey, this is the medicine, this is fine. And I think about it ahead of time, if I prepare for like hot flashes, so I can, go down to a t-shirt or go down to a thin shirt.
So here's what I would ask you to do on hot flashes. Save it, and next week we'll come back to you and we'll pick apart hot flashes for you, just like we just picked apart brain fog, because there's a lot of things you can do that can help you, or a number of things you can do to help, and we can give you some of those tips, but we need to move along today.
No worries.
So I'll try and remember when I see you that we've got to come to you to talk about hot flashes. Okay, Jake, tell us how your procedure went today.
Okay. Well, for those who didn't know, I ended up getting a chemo port installed. I've had on my 12th chemo round weekly, and I'm running out of veins. They're collapsing, they're bruising, they're looking horrible. So the doctor said, you have to get a port. So I did, and it's been a long day, to put it mildly. We got up about 6:30, which damn near killed me in itself. And we didn't get home until 2:30. Part of the problem was we got there in the dark, and my wife left the car on, or the lights on, so she had a dead battery, and they wouldn't let me go out and do anything. I had to sit in the room, the recovery room. I know some people who've had chemo ports, like Peter, or kind of didn't take the excuse me, didn't take the any extra anesthesia. They gave me, but they did. I'm a big wimp, so I insisted on it basically. And they said they gave me a combination of clindamycin, an antibiotic, fentanyl, and Versed, which I know Peter and Rick were talking about last night on the other call. And it works. I woke up several times. Procedure took about an hour and a half, I think a little longer than they anticipated. And I'd hear them talking, or I feel like tapping on my chest, but no pain whatsoever until now. It hurts. Now I'm sore. And the nurse had to keep tapping me on my ear to make sure I was, I guess, breathing. I don't know. So anyway, it was uneventful. It was relatively simple procedure. It just took a lot longer than we had hoped that it would. And hopefully now it'll work for the foreseeable future. They said that the doctor said that they're usually good for, or can be good for up to 3,000 needle sticks. So that'll long outlive me.
So, Jake, what took so long with you? Did they tell you?
Well, part of it, you have to go to pre-registration. And we got there early because we were afraid,
the procedure. Why did the procedure take so long?
I don't know. Most of it was prep. They put you in, and it's done in interventional radiology. And so they have an X-ray machine in there, and they hook that up and set that up, and they set up your IV. And I don't know why it just took so long. It just did. But they use an X-ray machine and a sonogram to monitor where they're putting the device. There's an incision in your neck, which they thread into your jugular vein. Some people get the subclavicle, but I got mine in the jugular. And then they make another incision in your chest where they put the actual port. And that apparently did not take long at all. It was all the preparation. And then I had to go to because I was on the local or the twilight anesthesia. I had to go to recovery for about an hour.
Okay.
And then when they were, and then I said, like, the battery died, so my wife had to fight with finding somebody who could charge the battery for her, and that added another hour to the day.
Yeah. So we can't really help you on the battery chargers other than to suggest that you buy, like I have one of these portable battery charge things. They do work. I have one question, and then I just going to open it up to see if anybody else wants to hear more about this port or even understand what it is. Some people may not even know what we're talking about. What was the latest PSA? The last one I have was from the 1st of October.
Right, 107.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything since then?
No.
Okay.
So I have to go to my oncologist tomorrow for this is my off week, so I have to go in and get a blood test. I'm hoping it's then next week they'll use the port, I guess.
Okay. So anybody have any questions on what are you showing us?
This is a booklet that they give you. Some of the ports are circular, some of them are square, and some of them are triangular. Mine is kind of like an ET kind of thing. Don't ask me which one, but it's one of these 5. They give you a card that they want you to carry at all times. I guess Peter knows that. So I don't know. No, I got what they call a power port, which they like if I need to get a CT, for example, I can get the injection of the contrast through the port. That's what a power port does. But the doctor said most people can't, or most places don't have that capability. So,
Jake, I thought I would be able to get my blood test through it, but I can't. Only certain places like the hospital and stuff are trained and have the special needles to go into the port. So I still have to get my blood tests through my veins in my arm when I go every couple of weeks. And the other thing is, after you're done with chemo, rather than take the thing out because you don't know what the future holds for you, you've got to go in about every 7 or 8 weeks and get it flushed with this heparin solution. It only takes minutes or so, but you can't let it go beyond that. So you got to monitor the timing on that for yourself.
Yeah, I asked my oncologist about that, and she said she would do the flushing, and she thinks that she can get blood too.
That's good.
I hope that's the case.
Yeah,
why can't they get blood out of yours?
Well, a lot of phlebotomists aren't trained in it or don't have the right needle and stuff, so I've never had a blood test through mine.
Oh, in my office, she has one phlebotomist, and she cannot do the port. The oncologist herself does the chemo, and she does the drawing of the blood. So maybe that's the distinction. Did you get rid of your port, or do you still have it?
I still have it, and I get it flushed next week.
Okay. Do you have to go to the hospital for that, or can your doctor do it?
I have to go to the hospital for it here. It's just because this is the backwoods here, but I do it in conjunction with something else.
Okay.
Do you have, Dr. Mark, do you have any input on ports or any of this discussion?
No, I guess the only comment I was going to make is we do a lot of these procedures under that light sedation. We also throw in some propofol, which puts you to sleep for the whole procedure. But I've not used ports at all in anything we do, and really don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions on ports?
You won't even notice that you have it in a couple of weeks. You forget about it. Yeah, except when you take a shower and you kind of rub yourself in your chest and you feel it a little bit. But other than that, it's nothing.
Right, yeah, they did say I had to take, go about 7 days without getting it wet. I could take a shower, but I had to put plastic over it, or as they say, just do a sponge bath.
Right.
Yeah, just make sure you keep the cap on it on Halloween, Jake. Okay. All right. Well, if no one else has any other questions on the procedure or ports, we will move right along.
Thank you.
Thank you. Herb, what do you have for us today?
I'm still struggling with finding radiation oncology that will do the job. So basically, you know that I've been treated at NIH, and the NIH oncologist basically said she would follow standard of care based on the STAMPEDE trial, which is a certain amount of radiation, but it's not curative radiation. It wasn't designed to be. But based on Rick's suggestion, I had a wonderful conversation with Mac Roach. I think this guy is absolutely fabulous. I mean, he just blew me away. And, you know, a gentleman, a scholar, everything you'd ever want. And so Mac looked at my images and basically said, look, you're a candidate for SBRT. He would give high dose radiation, 4 times 9.5 gray, and be done with it. And when I brought that back to the person at NIH, she said we don't do that because it's not according to national guidelines. So they're but as Mac explained to me, guidelines are outdated these days. I mean, so here I am now trying to find out what the next step should be. And that's, so the last, so that just happened. I just found out this, I mean, she would give me 6 times 6 gray according to Stampede. I don't know if that's enough. I don't think it is. Mac didn't think it was. So then I've got to move on. They say I could find an outside radiation oncologist, which is now what I kind of figure out I have to do. And I don't know any. I did find a clinical trial at Weill Cornell where they were using the view ray that Mark just came through. In my situation, they're using view ray for metastatic hormone sensitive prostate cancer. And it's a phase 1 trial. And my wife is adamantly opposed to my going into a phase 1 trial. I think, you know, I'm more open because if they're actually going to do just the irradiation with the view ray of the prostate, that's what I would go for. So I don't see why I shouldn't. But that's where we are. And so I'm looking for advice is where do you think, now that I think I can't stay at NIH, at least for radiation, where do you think would be the next, what do you think the next step should be? Mac also felt that, you know, that he would do whack-a-mole. He would also irradiate the Mets, which NIH adamantly would not do because that's not protocol. So that's where I am, and I'm looking for suggestions. I mean, Hopkins is the obvious choice, right? It's nearby, and they've got great radiation oncology. I don't have a connection there. So I'm just now listening.
Okay. So I am trying to recall who's at Hopkins, but I have an idea, which is, why don't you ask Mac who's at Hopkins? Did you ask Mac who's at Hopkins first? You probably did.
I didn't. I did have an email with Mac today when he said, you know, he said, why don't let the NIH oncology RO talk to me? And I put that in an email to her, and she just blew it off.
Okay.
So that annoyed the hell out of me.
So what I think I would do is ask Mac who he recommends at Hopkins, and could he provide an introduction? I think that's the simplest way. I need to look at the Hopkins ROs to see if there's a name I recognize. But even if I did, it's not going to be as good as it coming from Mac. Because if you
Right,
it comes from Mac, you'll be royalty there.
I mean, the other part of it is, you know, I was going to just contact the PI of the Oriole trial, right? Which is a really exceptional, you know, that's sort of what people point to as irradiating the prostate. In that, in his case, it was newly diagnosed people, but still, that's certainly radiation of the prostate. The other issue that I guess I'm facing is, you know, and I'll talk to Mark actually offline about this, is it worth just going to UCLA for the ViewRay machine, which evidently is a lot less traumatic than SBRT.
When you say a lot less traumatic, I mean, SBRT isn't that traumatic.
Well, I was told they have to insert a spacer.
I think that I don't think Mac uses a spacer. He doesn't like them. But you'd have to ask him. But he's not in favor of spacers at all. I think I'm looking to see the radoncs. I think the only one that might ring a bell is Song, S-O-N-G, Daniel Song. I'm just seeing, the other ones don't really ring a bell, but I think I would definitely ask Mac for his recommendation. Let's see, they say, no, yeah, Song does. Song does. I think for some reason, oh, that's right, Tran, that's the guy.
Well, Tran is the PI. Tran is the PI of the Oriole trial.
Yeah, but I've heard funny things. I seem to think there was something that wasn't quite. He did something that was strange. I can't think what it was. Anybody have any suggestions? Hopkins, radiation oncology?
I mean, or I can go anywhere else. I mean, if it's SBRT and it's 4 days of SBRT, I can do what Mark did and just go someplace else for a week.
Well, the only thing I would say to you is make sure you have a lot of trust in who designs the SBRT. You know, unless you get Mac to design it and send it to some guy and ask them to execute, that's another story, because that could be done. But you know, you could have trouble finding a local guy who'd be willing to do that. But I would say stick to center of excellence. That would be my response. Tran or Song, and I think I would ask Mac, who would he recommend at Hopkins, and would he be good enough to send you an introduction, or even send you a letter that you can give to them, or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have enough connections with Hopkins that I'm sure I can get in. I mean, it's just a matter of knowing who to go to.
Right. I mean, we know two of the GU medoncs at Hopkins, but I don't have any sort of connections to any of the radoncs there. Anyone else?
I mean, what about the side effects? I mean, the other choice I was offered at NIH, you know, was standard, you know, 40 weeks, 40 injections over 8 weeks, you know. What about that? 40 treatments over 8 weeks, is that better?
Ken Anderson, you did that. Who else did it on the? Ken?
I did. Jim Ward did.
Okay, Jim Ward.
Yeah, I can honestly say that I think the standard at the moment, the news, I would do SBRT 4 rounds and bang it out. The end result's the same. Way less hassle on yourself. You just got to find the guy to do it. So I'm quite happy with the guy that did mine. The guy here locally, Jerry, I mean, he's a great guy, but you know, he's in Phoenix, so and I don't know that he does it. So I would do what Rick said. You know, get Mac to refer you to someone, and if he would design the treatment, like lay it out for the guy, and the guy would accept it, that'd be the best scenario.
Well, I mean, he already designed the treatment. He told me what he would do. He said he would give 9.5 gray over 4 days, Monday,
No,
Tuesday,
there's
Thursday,
more to
Friday.
it than just
Right.
calling out how many grays. So.
Right. But he also looked at my prostate anatomy and he said he's not worried about other organs getting in the way.
Well, let me just say I am so happy, and I will send Mac a note to thank him too. Really appreciate him talking to you. Dennis McGuire, you had SBRT to the gland not long ago, right?
That's correct. In April, and I had 5 sessions over 2 weeks. They wanted to go 1 day on, 1 day off, and I think to clarify one of the points that was made, the ViewRay is actually a radiation machine that they use, but they actually utilize SBRT technology through that machine.
Right, but it's basically MRI guided, so they absolutely they watch the prostate because while they're doing the radiation to make sure they hit it.
Yes, exactly.
Jim Ward?
Yes.
Any input for Bob?
Well, I went through 40 plus treatments at MD Anderson, and I agree with Ken. It was obviously it's a long slog. I felt like I tolerated it pretty well, but the possibility of doing SBRT really wasn't discussed. Now, perhaps that's because I had some lymph nodes involved, but that was never anything that we really, that we ever really explored. So I can't offer much comment on, whether or not SBRT is going to be better or not, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Rick, I'd like to tell her, I had the hydrogel spacer put in, and it's no big deal. They do it at the same time that they put in the gold fiducials, which they're going to have to do anyway.
Right.
So,
ViewRay doesn't use the fiducials.
Sorry?
The MRI guided, that's another thing. They don't need the fiducials.
Right, and the SBRT doesn't use the fiducials because it's MRI guided either, I think.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because they basically scan you somehow or other right at the beginning, and then they feed that in, and then the machine responds to the scan.
There have been a number of studies comparing SBRT to IMRT. SBRT always comes out slightly more effective and safer, less side effects. I had IMRT, but I wish I could have had SBRT. Chris King at UCLA, he's a big name in SBRT, if you want to check him out.
Dr. at UCLA is also right on. One of the other things about SBRT that's nice, when it's MRI guided, breathing mechanisms or breathing action and change in location is taken into account 8 times a second. And if you have a gas bubble that moves its way through as you're having the procedure, it will gate it and stop the beam. As a result, the margin that they build in regular IMRT or CyberKnife or Proton, they will build a margin into it to take into account any motion that might happen. With the ViewRay, that's automatically adjusted as the procedure each day is going on. I'm sure the procedure, I've never had IMRT, but On a bad day, if my bowel wasn't ready to get started, the longest was 50 minutes. On average was about 35 to 45 minutes each treatment, but it was only 5.
Uh-huh. Well, one thing, the interesting thing about what Mac was telling me, and I'll share it with the group, he says that he does 4, but everybody else does 5 because the insurance companies pay for 5.
Yeah, yeah. He said that on PCRI.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
When you look at the map, they're going to calculate out the biological activity, and in a normal IMRT course, you may get 60 gray total, but it's spread out over a longer time, and the biological effect of getting roughly 8 to 9 a day is the same, even if you're only getting about 36, 37 in
Right.
total.
Got it.
This might be a little crazy, but what about the option of flying out to San Francisco for a week and letting Mac do it?
Well, that's another option. I mean, I certainly have thought about that. That was not, I didn't exclude that. Obviously, if I could get just as well at Hopkins, which is very local, I think I'd be better off. But if I had to go to San Francisco, that wouldn't be so bad either.
Yeah, that's what I did back in the day, but that was IMRT, and I planted myself there for 3 months.
And we went for a hike.
Yes, yes. We visited Trevor.
No,
We did things.
I could think of worse places to be than San Francisco.
Well, you know, if you offer to take your wife, you could easily convince her.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, right now my wife is in a state of high dudgeon and doesn't want to go out of the house. She's really petrified of going on an airplane.
Okay. Okay.
So there
well,
we go. We can move on and we'll discuss in the future.
Yeah, but I think we've given you a few good suggestions.
Yes, I agree.
And, I'm still not totally clear. I have one question for Dr. Mark. Is there any, between SBRT and ViewRay, what would you say, Mark?
I would say that the future of radiation therapy is going to be ViewRay. There's another company at MD Anderson that does MRI guided. I mean, SBRT is SBRT, but the advent here is the adaptive monitoring and gating that's built in with an MRI. So you don't have to do fiducials or spacer, and you have an extra margin of safety because you're not extending the area of treatment beyond the prostate as much. Now, same with CyberKnife, we have to ask, gee, are we cutting margins short by doing this and then missing cells? And I'm not sure if that's the case, but all the stuff that I've read, you know, an MRI guided SBRT is the way to go.
Okay, so but MRI guided SBRT is ViewRay basically.
Yes,
Yes.
that's it's
so-
sort of a ViewRay is a trade name.
Right, I understand. Do you guys, Mark and Herb, are you in contact with each other already?
Yeah, I'm going to talk to Mark later after the meeting.
Okay, great. Okay, super. All right, so we'll move along. I mentioned to Len, I got to leave here at about 5 to 5 to help out with this new group that we're starting tonight. But I have sent Len a list of who still needs time. We have 4 people: Jeff, Jim Ward, John A, and Jim B. So Jim W, Jim B, Jeff, and John A. And I think we'll get to all of you. So let's go to Jeff.
So, Hi. So my question is about correlation of PSA with testosterone, and the situation is I have had two rises in PSA post nadir. I guess depends on when you say the nadir is, but in May I had the lowest post RT and ADT measurement of PSA, and it's gone up twice since then. But my testosterone has also increased, and I guess the question is, I mean, I've been told that anecdotally there is some observed correspondence, but does anyone have any knowledge about that?
So let's just talk about the actual numbers, Jeff. So
Yeah.
the last number I had was 727. Your PSA was 0.187 and your testosterone was 620. So tell us what's happened since then.
Yeah, let's see. That's right. So on October 2nd, PSA was 0.209 and the testosterone was 671.
So that was hold on a minute, on
10-2.
October 2nd, 10-2, you were at, PSA was 0.209.
Yeah.
And your T was how much? 671?
1. Right.
So look, here's what I want to tell you. I know we've talked about this before, and I think it's just something you've got to bear in mind. We know that for people that have gone through treatment like you did originally, which as I recall was high dose brachytherapy and IMRT, isn't that right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right. So for people that have gone through that, it's not uncommon for the PSA to rise. And I think I told you that in my own particular case, it rose for over 11 months each month, kept going up and up and up.
Right.
And it peaked at 0.96. And every month I would send a note to Mac because I was getting tested monthly at Kaiser. And I'd write to Mac, and Mac would say, don't worry, it'll come down, and don't worry, it'll come. And I'm thinking to myself, right, easy for you to say, Dr. Roach. But he was right. And there's an explanation, and I know I've sent you that little graph before.
Right.
And and I think that what's driving this is that little graph that I showed you, is that the PSA makes its way back to the way it would have gone down had you had PSA radiation treatment and you hadn't had the ADT. And so
well, the radiation treatment was completed about 3 years ago. So
yes, I understand. So was mine, but you were on ADT until
1.5 years ago, about.
Right. So what you're looking at is how would that radiation treatment have driven your PSA over this period?
Okay.
And the fact is your PSA was forced down to a baseline for much of the period. But when you come off the ADT, the PSA naturally goes back to where it would have been. And then it starts to fall. And that's what happened in my case. It went up for 11 months and then it came down again. And so, you know, my question to you is, what is, I forget, who was your, I know Chang left, who was your principal radiation oncologist at UCSF?
Anthony Wong now.
Wong. So I think you've got to go back to Wong and say, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, he's explained that. It's just what you said. It's a little unclear to me exactly. Is it? I mean, okay. So what is it that the ADT and the zero testosterone essentially is masking the effects of what's going on with the radiation, or does it actually put everything in suspended animation so that where you left off as soon as your testosterone recovers again? Because it seems like.
And I know, you and I have talked about this quite a bit, but let me see if I can show you what it does. Hold on one second. And let me just find the little graph that I drew. Where is it? PSA. Wait a minute. Yeah, I'm in the right folder. PSA response to ADT as a predictor. Here it is. Okay, I'm going to share my screen because it's so much easier to do this.
Right.
Try and explain it, and then everybody will have the benefit of seeing what's going on. Okay, so can everybody see that my hand, and those of you like Herb Geller and Len, I don't want anybody making fun of my graphs, okay? All right, so here's what happens. This is PSA on the vertical axis, and this is time on the bottom axis. And somebody like myself or Jeff, we go in right around 0.00. Actually, there's probably 0 minus 8 weeks because we get our ADT a little early. But this is where our PSA is, and we get our radiation. In Jeff's case, high dose brachy and IMRT, and in my case, low dose brachy and IMRT. And if we never got any hormone therapy treatment, our PSA would move down like this, and then there might be a little radiation bump, and then it would continue down. Now, the problem is that we got ADT, and that drove the PSA down to the baseline. So there was no PSA that could be read, and we move along for 12 months or 24 months. And at the time we stop that ADT, our PSA will move back to where it naturally would have been. What the incline of this slope is, etc., I don't know. By the way, nobody's ever done a paper on this. I had one guy, Stephen Frank at MDA, who drew this for me originally on the back of a napkin at a conference I was at. It was Mark Milkin's conference in Washington many years ago. And I took it off of that. So we really don't know. It hasn't been studied. This is the theory. But it goes back up to the line. If you stop at 24 months, it goes back up to the line here. And then when it hits the line, it starts to come down again. So what we're saying, and I'm saying it to you, and Wong is saying it to you, and Mac is saying the same thing, is this is the theory of what happens. And you have to, as a patient, not be too anxious when your PSA is going up all the time. And I don't know what else to say to you, and to ask about, well, what's the correlation between PSA and testosterone? I don't think that has anything to do with it. This is what it is, and I know I've sent you this graph before, so I just have to give you the same explanation. Now, let's open it up, and is there anybody? I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see who's on the call, and is there anybody who would like to comment on that?
Dr. Schultz in the key to prostate cancer has an explanation of radiation bump in there. So it's a well-known fact, and a lot of people freak out about it.
Yeah, but Peter, this is not just a radiation bump. This is ADT. This takes ADT into consideration too. This is the radiation bump plus being on hormone therapy whilst you're getting your radiation.
So I would think that if he were to go back on ADT, he'd probably end up back on your line that you had drawn out. I would think that the rate of doubling, if the time to double increases or decreases between doubling episodes, then it becomes more concerning. But I think that with a testosterone of 650 and not taking ADT, it's pretty likely that since there's some prostate cells there, you're going to show a rise in your PSA. So I think what you're seeing is more the lack of ADT than recurrence, but you need time to look at that, and doubling rates may be the most effective thing.
Right.
Okay.
Right. That's a good point. And your ADT, your PSA is moving up just like mine did. It moves up by an even amount.
I'm quite to the right of that curve, so it's beyond 36 months post RT. So
right, but that curve is totally hypothetical.
Okay, yeah.
It's just to show you that's not an actual curve. That's just to show you the concept of what's going on.
Okay, so then yeah. So anyway, the original question I had was, have other people heard that testosterone, the PSA correlates with testosterone to some extent?
Well, I mean, I think, Jeff, we just answered that.
I mean, you can certainly say that for if you have ADT, yeah, the PSA goes to zero.
Yeah,
so obviously,
I mean,
in that case, yeah. But I mean, for small fluctuations, like I've heard that PSA has a half-life of like about 3 days, and testosterone varies significantly throughout the day. So you'd have to kind of look at it as a longer range correlation. Maybe I was thinking similar to like hemoglobin A1C is a marker for cholesterol level, or I mean glucose levels. So something like that as a surrogate marker kind of a thing. But I don't know. Has anyone heard about that specifically with T and PSA in looking at small variations?
I mean, I certainly don't know anything. I mean, as I told you before, there's been very, very little study done of how PSA changes or returns after radiation. There's been a lot on ADT. There's been lots done on how your testosterone comes back, almost nothing done on PSA. So, I don't know that we can be predicting with the radiation glitch. I mean, if you're asking, how does PSA change if you've got, if you get testosterone? Again, I mean, that's a huge subject that gets into BAT, bipolar androgen deprivation, and how much testosterone comes in. And if you flood it, the theory is that maybe not very much because the androgen receptors get flooded and they don't work. If you just get a little, it's really complicated, but I think it's not relevant. I mean, you're looking to give yourself comfort from the fact that maybe it went up a little bit because your PSA went up a little bit, your testosterone went up a little bit, but that's not what's going on.
Okay.
Something else is going on, and the graph I showed you is the explanation that you're probably getting from Wong, and I got from Frank, and what Mac is saying.
Yeah, so, right. Says there's not a good study to search for recurrent disease with PSA results at these low levels. Let's see. He's saying that he feels Okay. Recent results are not definitive for recurrence, may simply reflect a slight increased PSA related to your testosterone recovery. It doesn't go into all the, the bump and everything that you talked about. The PSMA PET scan is most effective for patients with intact prostate at PSA levels greater than 0.5 nanogram per mil. And we often wait until it's up in the range of 1, so that there's less to worry about with false negatives. So that's pretty much the entire reply I got.
Okay, and he's right. I mean, we can't tell you what's going on. Hopefully, the worst thing you can be doing is making yourself crazy now.
Yeah.
It's the worst thing. Because why? Because the anxiety, if there is any cancer, is going to aggravate the cancer. I can only,
right.
The way that I attracted it, it was what it was. I couldn't do anything. I wasn't going to go back on ADT right away. I needed to see where it was going. As long as we caught it in time, I said, okay. And it got up to 0.95. I mean, by the time it gets up to 0.95 to you, we're going to have to put a leash on you every time you go over the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah.
And so, and I told you this originally because I know you are an anxious person, and I wanted to prepare you. But you seem to have forgotten what we talked about.
No, I didn't forget about it at all. I just
well, but you were asking us about the correlation. Not the correlation.
Yeah.
All right.
Because I remember you were quite concerned when I originally told you in July that this might not be good news when I was reporting at that time. So.
Well, I think I said to you, yeah, mine went up too.
Yeah, right. And then I'm in the case where I never had much PSA to begin with, and all these devils in the details. So I just wanted to run it by.
I have to leave right now. We're going to move on to Jim Ward, and then after that to John, and then to Jim Barnes. And I'm turning this over into the very capable hands of my man Len, who will report back to me. And if anybody needs to get hold of me, you know how to find me. So I'll leave you in Len's hands, ably supported by our new co-moderator, Peter Kafka, and Jake. But is Jake still with us? He went to sleep.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Okay. Goodbye.
All right.
Bye.
Okay, Jim Ward, you are at bat. Go ahead.
Hey, well, so this topic I wanted to take up with the group is, Len, as you may remember, it was a topic I had tried to bring up on an earlier call and kind of found myself in the same position I'm in now, which is that there's just a few minutes left. So the topic is taking a potential drug holiday, and I think with the time we have left, it's kind of hard to see how we're going to be able to get it covered meaningfully. So maybe in lieu of that, maybe what I'd like to do is, if we could, is maybe just identify the guys in the group who have taken a drug holiday or who are on one. I know, Len, you have. I know Peter has. I think Dennis Correa said he's on one right now. I think I made a note from an earlier call that Jay Mills might be on one, or maybe has taken one in the past. And then if you guys are gracious enough, I'd love to just chat with you offline, because I know this stuff can get a little bit involved. And, what I'm interested in discussing is kind of the protocol around your PSA number that, you and your oncologist use to determine when you should restart hormone therapy, and how often you had your PSA and your testosterone checked during your drug holiday. And then the last thing I'll raise is, Rick recently introduced me to this idea that a drug holiday might not have to be a holiday from all ADT meds. That, for example, you might stop your LHRH medication, but perhaps continue on an anti-androgen to retain the benefits of that type of medication. That's a new concept for me. We didn't really have an opportunity, Rick and I, to discuss it fully. So if anyone's done anything like that, which I'm just going to call kind of a partial drug holiday, I mean, I'd love to talk to somebody about that. The only other comment I'll make is I'm targeting to start this potential drug holiday in January when I will have completed 2 years on hormone therapy. And for just over 1 year, I've been at 0.1 or less. So I've been holding pretty steady. Paul Korn is my GU med onc at MD Anderson, and he supports it. But the devil's in the details. And I want to try to kind of get ahead of the planning and visit with, guys who have done a drug holiday before to kind of help inform my discussion with Dr. Korn. So again, if nothing else, if we could just maybe verify any, who's been on a drug holiday, and if I can get a hold of Rick, I guess, and get your contact information, I guess that's what I would propose to do. If you guys are, game to carve out a little time for me offline.
Yeah, I think that's the best idea, Jim, because you're talking about a half-hour discussion here, and we're already at 8 o'clock. So all the people you named are, in fact, or have been, in fact, on drug holiday. So those are the people, myself, Peter, Jay Mills right now, I believe, is on a drug holiday. Dennis Correa just started. So those are the people who can talk to you offline.
Wonderful. So should I just get a hold of Rick to get contact information for at least those, you and the other 3 gentlemen, Peter, Dennis, and Jay, and then just kind of reach out?
Yeah. Yeah, he's got all the email addresses.
Okay, perfect. Len, I think I have your email address anyway, and I might have Peter's as well. I know. So anyway, I'll reach out to you, and I'll be respectful of your time, but I'm definitely interested in your, in your experience.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Can I ask Tim a question? I'm just starting my journey on ADT, and I've had 6 weeks so far, but I'm sentenced to 2 years on it. Tim, I was just wondering how you're feeling at the end of 2 years of ADT, and if you saw what the impacts you saw.
Is this Jay?
This is James.
This is Jim Barnes. No, not Jay Mills.
Jim Barnes. Okay, so Jim, my short answer is this. I feel like I've tolerated ADT pretty well, but what I will say is I'm sort of, I'm in the last 6 months before I reach the 2-year mark. Okay, so I'm about 2 months away from 2 years, and I would say if you go back to a year and a half into ADT, I would say when I hit that year and a half mark, so sometime around May or June of this year, I felt like the fatigue became, has become more of an issue. And I'm exercising and doing all the things I'm supposed to do. And there are days when I don't feel any significant fatigue or I don't feel anything more than I ever did going back, a year ago. But I would definitely say that's the thing I noticed as I'm sort of, getting closer to 2 years is, man, it just kind of wears you down.
Okay.
I hope that made sense.
I would agree with that. Of course, the longer you're on ADT, the more it grinds you down.
Yeah.
Jim Barnes, was that a question you wanted to ask, or you have another issue?
That was it. I just kind of wanted to see, am I feeling the full effect right now, or is there, changes to come? Am I physically going to change, and impacts, thinking osteoporosis in my mind. Is that going to affect me at all? And is it going to, does it accelerate the aging process? What's it do? And
I think most guys would probably tell you that some of the side effects you kind of get used to, or maybe they decline a bit, like the hot flashes. But the one thing that typically is the one that wears you down is the fatigue.
And Jim, I might add to this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Len.
I just want to just wanted to ask, does anyone disagree with that, or is that generally true? Anybody who's been on long-term
Yeah,
ADT?
yeah. Lynn, I agree. The fatigue definitely is the one over the long haul. I've been on ADT for 4 years, and you have to work really, really hard to keep physically fit. I mean, it's a tough hoe, but it can be done. But if you can get a holiday in there, Jim, by all means, get Paul on your side and find out kind of the parameters, and yeah, we'll be here to help you through whatever you decide to do.
Yeah. Well, thank
Definitely.
you. Well, I'll reach out to the guys that Len's kind of listed off, people that I've jotted down in the past, and we'll look forward to kind of hearing about how you're, hearing about your holidays.
Okay. John, is it Antonio? Is that your last name, John?
Antonucci.
Antonucci. Okay.
Yeah, Antonucci. So yeah, just quick answers for me in the interest of time, but something worried me. So I had a post-prostatectomy PSA of 0.17, and after 10 weeks of degarelix and abiraterone, my repeat PSA is 0.1. Now, was it realistic for me to? I expected it to be non-detectable. Is it a bad sign that it's 0.1, or is that perfectly fine after 10 weeks of hormone therapy and abiraterone?
I think you're doing well. I don't think you were Gleason 9, right?
Yes, I was.
Yeah, I don't think you should expect after just 10 weeks that you'd become undetectable. I think you'd have to consider yourself awfully fortunate to go down to undetectable that quickly. Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Okay, well, that's reassuring.
It took me some while to get down to undetectable, like maybe 6 months, I think, actually, once I started Lupron, and it gradually drifted down to undetectable. And
6 months, wow.
yeah.
Okay, I was just, a little worried that I wasn't, that my hormones, that my treatment wasn't working or something.
Yeah, I was told when I went on ADT last year, I was told that it would take it was a monthly injection of degarelix, and
That's what I got.
I was told, it could take 2 or 3 injections, 2 or 3 months for the PSA to even begin to show a decline. I was fortunate mine went to undetectable after the first shot, but they said that was just a good sign for me, but that typically it could take 2 to 3 months to go down to 0 or undetectable.
If I could add something too, as a med tech, I think so these numbers seem quite low to me when you get down to like 0.1, and maybe I just don't know, experiencing from the high numbers that I recently had. But on these machines that they're running these assays on, there's a lot of issues. There's a lot of things that could come into play, and with some of these numbers, and you could run a sample 5 times, and there'll be a little fluctuation in that number. So I've kind of taken the approach that I'm not going to focus so much on that, on the small increments, incremental changes that may occur. So please tell me if I'm wrong, but working in a lab, other assays, you could run a testosterone result and it'll come back 540, 530, 537, 542, 540. And the main thing is, that it's within a certain accuracy range.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. I had another question for the Firmagon guys, which is that I had a shot yesterday, and I got a temperature today. Did you ever get that just from the Firmagon, or do I have an independent infection of some sort?
No, that's not uncommon. I've had fevers from Firmagon. I know Jay Mills has told me that he's had fevers. Ken, did you raise your hand there? You had fevers?
Yeah, I'm the same. I had one. I had to go off it. You know, I decided after 2 rounds, I wasn't a good one for me. So the night after I got the shot, my fever was 101.7, almost 102, and it was. And I never ever get a fever, so relatively never get. And it was from that shot. I know it was.
Okay, yeah, mine was 101.2 today, and I was hoping that it maybe could be a result of the shot, so I don't have COVID or anything.
Yeah, you can always switch to Lupron or Eligard, one of those.
Yeah, I think I am going to switch to Lupron soon because these local reactions are killers. I had a quick last question. It was off of something that Tracy said when he said he was stage 4. Now, I know we usually, use the sort of TNM method of staging with prostate cancer, but and when I looked at my notes from the clinicians, they always call me stage 4 also. But don't you have to have distant metastases to be called a stage 4? I had metastases in the pelvis, but that's not enough to make me a stage 4, is it?
I believe it is. I was designated as T4, stage 4, by Sloan Kettering, and I had no bone mets, at least not visible. I had prostate cancer extending to 2 pelvic lymph nodes and bilateral seminal vesicles. They consider that T4 or stage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thanks. That's it. That's it, guys.
Yeah, I mean, anytime your PSA is going down, your treatment is not failing.
Okay, thanks.
Even if it's not going down as fast as you like.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys, 8:11. Anything else before we close out from anybody? Peter, I know you have to get going. Yeah, Jim Barnes.
Oh, I just wanted to give an update, but first I wanted to open up a package I got today in the mail. So,
yeah.
Too bad Rick isn't here to see this, right?
Very nice. Is that your update?
No, but it's freezing my ass off too. Now, in a second I'll be sweating from a hot flash. No, I was my update is I went in for my radiation planning treatment last week. So, and I'm talking to the doc, and he's going to do SBRT. I'm going to go through six treatments over 6 weeks, once a week, and treat my prostate, and then they're going to then in an additional treatment treat the spot on my spine. So, and they feel that'll be enough to basically take care of the cancer, and basically see what happens from there. I've been on Eligard for six weeks, and then I'm going to start enzalutamide in a week or as soon as I get that prescription. I did, we talked about that study that says the sequencing abiraterone and then enzalutamide, and I forwarded that to the doctor. He said he was aware of that. He said 2 reasons he didn't want to do that was, one was because it wasn't proven to be castrate resistant at this time. And number 2 is I have a history of heart issues, cardiomyopathy, and I get a pacemaker and other things. So he felt more comfortable staying with enzalutamide. So that's just kind of throw out there my update to see if anybody has any questions or comments about it, to spur my thoughts so I can go in as best prepared for the doctor's visits as possible. And I also have based on the conversations we've had here, I have a bone density test scheduled for next week. So, as a baseline measurement here at the beginning of my ADT, and that's kind of it. They also, during the planning session for the radiation, they did a CAT scan. They marked up my body, put these permanent marker stickers on me, X's on both of my hips and right below my navel to help, position the radiation equipment appropriately, I guess. And I'm sure it'll be, I'm assuming it's going to be an MRI guided radiation, and I'll have to confirm that with them. But that's, something I just heard of tonight that, something I'm going to just, that's the great thing about these groups. They spur thought and ideas and make me question the doctor and what's going on and that sort of thing. So that was my update.
Yeah. Couple of things there that don't make much sense to me. He says you shouldn't get Zytiga because you're not castrate resistant, but he's going to give you enzalutamide. It used to be that years ago, they didn't give you either one of those drugs until you were castrate resistant. But now they give you both of those drugs right up front before you're castrate resistant, fairly commonly. What's your Gleason?
9.
9, yeah. So it's, I have no idea what he's talking about. Either one of those drugs would be appropriate.
I am going to start enzalutamide.
I know, but you said the reason he told you he's putting you on enzalutamide is because you're not castrate resistant, so he didn't want to give you Zytiga. That makes no sense to me. I don't know. Does that make sense to you, Peter?
The heart issue is the one that makes sense to me. I was on Zytiga for a year. They didn't tell me this, but about 30% of men on Zytiga, the blood pressure goes up, and I was one of those 30%. I had to go on blood pressure medication to bring my blood pressure down. So that might be the factor he's talking about there. I think that is one of the big differences.
Yeah, that's true. It does, it can raise your blood pressure.
But that's not what he said. So Len, I take your point more specific, is that he's making a point that makes no sense.
Yeah.
So you got to ask him, you got to drill down on him a little harder and ask him to give you more information. Because I know Rick sent you the clinical trial that shows that Abby's better than Enza to start out. There's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't do Abby first. So, but the heart thing could come into play. You just need to ask him and have him show you.
That was his reason.
Oh.
Maybe I'm not communicating it right. So I have ADD. So, I'm a novice at all this stuff. So it's trying to tough to be the go-between between doctors and you guys and giving accurate pictures, that sort of thing.
Gotcha.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Well, it sounds like...
I missed that. Did you say he told you he didn't want to give you Zytiga because of blood pressure issues?
Yes, that's why we discussed the study, and he said he had seen it, and he acknowledged its credibility, and he was fine with that. He's like, the reason why I wouldn't want to give you abiraterone first is because of the heart-related issues. And now that you guys mentioned it, it was blood pressure that he mentioned.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, it's real. It's real. Not everybody gets it, but I did.
Okay. I think we better.
I even had to switch heart doctors because my longtime heart doctor never made the association, so I tossed him and got a new one. Every time you go to a doctor, they ask you what medications you're taking. And I told the guy, and he didn't make the association at all. So, anyway.
Yeah. All right, guys, our numbers are dwindling. I think we'll call it a night, and we'll pick it up again next Monday. Thank you all for your participation.
All right,
thanks, Len. Take care.
All right.
Yeah, thanks, Len.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
All right.
You guys.